So Wednesday webinar is to really create space for thinking, for conversation, for experimentation with the wonderful reality that is your interior world and my interior world. And I answer questions. I bring some research, some pre-prepared material, some things that I'm thinking about and I am excited about. I bring those to you so that we can kind of look at them together. And whether you are live on this call or whether this is on a replay, you can bring yourself to the material and let it speak to you about you. Now, I am an expert in my field, but even the best experts do not know as much about your wiring, your temperament, your experiences, your history, your interior world as you. You are the expert on you. And I always encourage people to bring their intention, to notice what is happening for them, what is happening for you right now, but not to give away their power to somebody in a white coat or a white shirt who claims to know more than you do about you. Open questioning is the best place for any professional to position themselves, is to ask open questions, create a loving, supportive environment, and allow the revelations to surface. So that is just my word for the wise on how to be the expert in your life, but to engage other experts in growing you to be the best version of you that there is. So the material for this week then, if you're just joining me in the webinar room, welcome. It's lovely to have you here on this Wednesday lunchtime. It's raining where we are. I don't know what the weather's like with you. Wet and drizzly, and we still have very large puddles in our garden. Next door's garden is entirely flooded, so we are definitely having a wet winter spring. So I don't know what it's like with you, but it's dry here in the webinar room. Woohoo! And we are focusing on attention. We are attending to attention. We are focusing on focus. We are noticing what we notice here in the webinar room and on the replay. And we are going to compare, perhaps get an insight into what we actually spend our attention on, what we actually focus on, and what we would really like to focus on, where we would like our attention to be going. We're going to see if there is any a disparity between those two things. So as always, I've got some thoughts and slides for you. What is getting your attention and what is not, because every time you say yes to something, you say no to something else. And so we need to become more aware of what we are aware of. We need to give attention to what we are giving attention to. And that's the topic of this presentation. But a little about me, first of all, for those of you who have never seen me on one of these webinars before, or perhaps you're new to following me on social media. My name's Naomi Light, and I am a life coach, a facilitator, and the founder of the AQI process, which is an online course that raises your adaptability, that helps you to leverage the 3 centers of intelligence that you already have. You have innate adaptability. It's your mind, your heart, and your gut. And understanding those 3 centers of intelligence, in developing them, and most importantly, in making them work together, allowing them to work together, you can optimize the inbuilt intelligence you have for adapting. And adaptability is so crucial. I mean, we are in the middle, as I speak, we are in the middle of the coronavirus, with worldwide stock markets going haywire. And adaptability is crucial when the world is changing at such a rate, when there's volatility, when there's chaos, when there's change everywhere we look. Adaptability is crucial. How do we maintain our businesses, our relationships, our family, our self-esteem in the midst of chaos? But more than that, adaptability is crucial if you've got any kind of vision for your life. If there's anywhere you know you want to go, if there's anyone you know you want to be, if there is a future life you know you want to live in, the question is, how do you adapt to become the person who can live there? How do you adapt to create the future that you want to have? How do you adapt so that your dreams, your visions, your goals for your life actually come out of your head, come out of dreamland, and land in your reality, in your present moment? And the reason I created this course is because my life went through rapid transition. I was in the midst of chaos in my world, in my situation, in my relationships, in my finances, in my work life, and I was forced to adapt. And what I learned in those years and months, I now teach as a model. The change wave model is at the heart of the AQI process. So that's a little bit about that. Actually, the next course launches next week, which is so exciting. And we are going to track with a small group of people through these 16 weeks of discovery. I can't wait for that. In addition to being the founder of the AQI process, I am a Heart Styles associate, which means that I am trained in the psychometric testing system that we have in Heart Styles, and I can deliver reports to individuals and to teams and whole organizations that assess where they are at right now in their behavior and look at the culture they're creating in their own lives and in their own organizations, which is super fun and a great privilege, and is going exciting places. And then I'm also a life coach. I am a clinical hypnotherapist and an NLP practitioner. So I sort of do all of that in amidst all of the other ways I like to work with people. So that's a bit about me. I probably should have said that most importantly, I am a wife to the lovely Nicolite, and I am a mum to Noah, who's my oldest son, to Megan, the middle one, and Rosie, which is the greatest thrill of my life. And the source of all my intention, focus, and vision is how I can better serve my family, how I can be a better mum and wife, a better human being, and then how I can extend that to you and to the other people I come into contact with. So that is a little bit about me. And then let's move to our topic. So the question I asked you is, what is getting your attention? Right now, maybe I am getting your attention. Hopefully, there's a reason why you stepped aside to focus on this, to watch the replay, or to be live in this room with me. This is getting your attention right now. What is not getting your attention while you are attending to this? And attention, the word in the dictionary, is made up of the ideas of awareness, noticing, observation, consciousness, what we regard or what we think of as interesting and important to us. And it can seem to us in our lives that those things that grab our attention do so spontaneously. You know, maybe we're walking down the street and we notice somebody and they just grab our attention. Perhaps something unusual about them, odd about them. Perhaps there is a shop front that grabs our attention. Maybe we see an ad as we're scrolling or watching television, and that grabs our attention. And it can seem like the control is with the things that we interact with, the people, the circumstances around us, and our attention is being pulled this way and that. Actually, if you lifted the lid on that and looked in your interior world, you examined your thoughts and your feelings, you'll realize that what gets our attention is the things that we are looking to notice. In fact, we have an internal script already in place for what we pay attention to and what we don't. And we get to decide how that works for us. Now, don't get me wrong. You're always going to, your attention will always be brought to drama or threat, or someone makes some loud noises, or, there's political unrest on the television. Of course, that's always going to get your attention. But to a certain extent, everything is programmed by us, by the experiences we've had, by the beliefs and values and framework we have for life. And what seems to randomly jump in front of us and grab our attention is actually much less random than that. I've done a lot of work on thinking, particularly the limits of thinking and biases. I was looking through the research I've done the other day, and there are 188 known conscious biases, which means that there are 188 ways, distinct ways, that scientists and researchers have worked out our brain will mash up the information it's getting and present us with a result that is biased in one way or another. So our thinking is much more to do with our perceptual prediction, the things that we are expecting to happen, than the raw data. It doesn't feel like that from the inside of our bodies when we are operating our brains, but our prediction for what is going to happen, i.e. what the expectations we have of life, the experiences we've had to date, and the framework for thinking we bring to life, say much more about what we notice and what we pay attention to than the actual sensory, it's called direct experience, than the things we hear, see, taste, touch, smell, feel, think, imagine, or even perceive in some extra sensory way, which is a topic for a whole nother day. One time I will do a Wednesday webinar about experience, direct experience, because there's so much juicy stuff in there about how we are experiencing the world and how we can take more control of that and direct our experience so we have the experiences we want to have. We'll get into that another day. So attention, what is getting your attention? What is attention? We've covered a little bit of what is attention. What is getting your attention? And I love quotes. If you follow me on Instagram, I hope you do. If you don't, my handle is at Naomi Grace Light. It'll be at the end of this presentation. Please follow me. I absolutely love interacting with people on Instagram. It's my favorite platform. And I quote a lot on there, some of my own thoughts and a lot of other people's sayings. And this one, I've heard it credited to Ralph Waldo Emerson, but here it's apparently by Samuel Smiles. Sow a thought, you reap an action. Sow an act, you reap a habit. Sow a habit, you reap a character. Sow a character, and you reap a destiny. And while it can seem like when I talk about attention, we are dealing with the minutiae. You know, we're dealing with the real detail here. Like, I mean, who cares whether I stare at that woman over there or I look out the window on the tube? Does it really matter what I'm giving my attention to? What thoughts pass through my mind? I mean, what is that to anybody else? Nobody can see my thoughts. You're right. It is the minutiae. But just like we have the phrase in English, we say, take care of the pennies and the pounds will take care of themselves. So in philosophical thinking and in psychology as well, we understand that our life is made up of tiny units of attention. Our days are made up of minutes. Minutes are made up of seconds, and what happens in those seconds becomes the material that we build our lives with. And that's what this quote is really trying to say. Sow a thought and you reap an act, and eventually your actions become the stuff of your life. Or in other words, we could say how we do anything is how we do everything. So when we are paying attention to attention, we're paying attention to everything. Because it's I've heard it called, attention is the clay with which we mold our lives. It's the very fibers of our life, and how we knit those together and the quality of those will make up the fabric of our lives. So it's critically important that we do take ownership of the minutiae of our thoughts and our feelings and what we give our attention to. We are limited beings, limited in this time-space continuum, and we are responsible. for what we do, and giving away that responsibility to others, I think, is one of the greatest tragedies going. And taking back responsibility for how we use our time, our energy, our finances, our resources, our skills, what we pay attention to, is always a way to win. And so I love to empower people with the ability to curate the life they've always wanted. And my starting place for this presentation, the stuff we're going to look at today, is that we need some data, because all the time we are perceiving where our attention goes. We're actually using that same perceptual prediction that I've talked about before, where we think we know what we've spent our time on, but actually we'd be surprised if we got the hard data. So a couple of years ago, I did this for a month. I tracked my time. Now, I think that there are 3 ways, in fact, to track your attention, and I've done all 3. So I'm going to focus on the kind of time tracking element of this, because we just don't have time to cover all 3. But if one of these grabs your attention, or you've done the other 2 and you think, I've never made a thought audit, go away. This is your project for the next few weeks. Get the data on where your attention goes, so you know. How are you going to know unless you have some data, unless you've actually got some facts and you've got some awareness of where your attention is going? So one thing I say is look at the spend line on your budget. In fact, my husband and I have just done our budget for this month, and we were looking at incomings and outgoings and discussing how we're going to set our lives up to make it all work. I always say that money is like water. It flows to the deepest place. And how you spend your money is an indicator of what is getting your attention, what is deepest in you, what is most important in you. Just look at your outgoing line. Are you buying lots of coffees with friends? Are you spending money on traveling around? Are you spending money on your job, your career, your vocation? Is that where all the money is going? Are you spending money on possessions, on holidays, on books, on artworks to hang on your wall? Without judgment, there's no judgment on any of this. Become aware of where your attention is going by looking at the budget line, putting it in in a graph, and letting the numbers speak to you about what's actually happening in your life, not what you think is happening, what's actually happening. Reality test your theories about where your attention goes. The second one is that you can make a thought audit. I believe, although I never got to this point with my own thoughts when I did a thought audit, but I believe that you only ever think 7 things in any one season of your life. There are only 7 thoughts we think, which sounds crazy. But what I'm talking about is if we actually boil down, when I'm thinking about the kids, really, there's only a couple of things I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about, are they okay? And who are they? That's really, when it comes to looking after their washing, cleaning their shoes, brushing their hair, whatever else I'm doing, I'm asking myself, I'm thinking the thought, are the kids okay? And when I'm noticing, we had a school report yesterday, a parents' evening yesterday that we went to, and I was listening to the teachers talk about the kids, and I'm thinking, who are they? Who are they becoming? What can I notice about them that is teaching me who my children are so I can understand them better? That's it. Those are my 2 thoughts. Are they okay? How can I make them more okay? Are they okay? And who are they becoming? And so you can see that by grouping thought areas in our lives, just arrive at 7. You only have 7 things that we think in any one season of our lives. So that might be something you want to do. You do this 3 times a day. So morning, middle of the day, and at the end of the day. And you just write down in a journal the thoughts you have had. Try and make them unedited. I say, be like the reporter in your life. Your job is not the editor to make decisions about what that means. Just report on the raw data. And the third one is track your time. And the best way to do that is with an app. So I used Hours, which is an app I had on my phone that I could set up to have categories that fitted my life. So I would have a housework category. a work time category, an email category, a rest and leisure category. And then with a very simple click of a button and prompts. So it would ask me, what are you doing right now? How have you spent the last 3 hours? You've got 3 hours today that have been uncategorized. I could quickly get a breakdown of my week according to how I spent my time. And it could show me where my attention was going. And I've got a fantastic example here of somebody who did just that. A girl called Erin Greenwald, and she's put an article, it's here, it's on Zapier.com, that it really goes into a lot of detail. She tracked for 40 days. She tracked how she spent her time, and then she created these bar graphs of how she wanted to spend her time and how she actually spent her time. So she had some amazing insight into where her attention actually went. And I won't kind of go into detail on this because we just don't have time, but I took from her article one of the quotes that she said, which is what she learned. A couple of things immediately stood out. The amount of time I spent on play and maintenance is grossly over my ideals, causing me to lose time in important areas like work, development, relationships, and wellness. Now, I'm sure for Erin, her biases were playing down the amount of time that she needed for maintenance, just for keeping life going, for doing the daily essential tasks that kept her household, life, health functioning. And equally, she may well have had a bias that played down the amount of time she spent on play, on just doing fun things. And she actually goes on to say that a lot of that playtime was watching television. And it really made her think about how much attention television was getting in her life, just for her. You know, there's no rights or wrongs here. It's about you noticing what's going on. You having the information that empowers you to curate the life you've always wanted. And then these are her 3 takeaways from doing that exact experiment, from tracking her time so she could work out where her attention went to. She was more conscious of time. It was at the forefront of her mind, what she was doing and how much time it was using up. So she said, simply the act of tracking was making me more aware of how I was spending my time and more likely to stop spending it in ways I didn't want. Second takeaway is that she limited multitasking. It also made me more likely to monotask, since it's challenging to track if you're often switching between different tasks, which is interesting. We're going to come on to this in a sec. Finally, doing this experiment made me appreciate how much time there really is in a day. It's clear to me now that I do have the time. I just have to be mindful about how I prioritize it. And that final point there, that final takeaway is a critical one for us to resolve within ourselves. Because so often priorities come into our minds and we will use the phrase, I just don't have the time for that. I hear myself say it. I think it all the time. I just don't have the time for that. When actually, if we were mindfully aware that we have, thousands of minutes every day, we have enough time for everything. If we pay careful attention to how we spend it, we can achieve all of our heart's desires. We can bring about the kind of change we want to see in our lives. We can become the person we want to be. And sometimes that I haven't got enough time thought is just the ceiling, the glass ceiling we need to break through in order to move on. So really challenging that thought in particular, the I don't have enough time mantra, really challenging that, confronting it with some data, but also then reprogramming your mind, perhaps adopting a verbal affirmation like, I've got enough time. I'm going to choose to spend it wisely, and repeating that to yourself out loud daily for a week, maybe 2. will begin to carve a new neural pathway in your brain that breaks through that glass ceiling of I don't have enough time and reprograms you to say, I do have enough time. There are enough hours in the day for all my priorities, but I need to choose how I spend it. And I promise you that if you've got some hard data and some intention, you will find it's magic what you can do with your time and attention, and how much more juice you can squeeze out of life in ways that you just didn't know were possible. So I'm just going to take a moment now to think about this idea of multitasking, because as well as the mantra that we will often hear ourselves saying or hear other people saying, I don't have enough time, we have this myth in our culture that we can increase time by multitasking. That's okay. I just give my attention to 2 activities at once, or 3 or 4. I'm doing all these things at the same time. I am being super productive. I'm getting loads more done. Woohoo, look at me, how I am increasing and elevating my attention. I've got more time because I can multitask. So the person who I've seen that says this most brilliantly, there's a video on YouTube in Braincraft. Go subscribe to Braincraft. They are absolutely brilliant. And this is a 5-minute video. We're going to see the first 1 minute. I'm going to show you now, but do go away and look at it and subscribe to the channel to see the great insights that Braincraft have on multitasking.
It seems like today, the more things you can do at once, the better.
I'm watching Netflix while eating sushi and writing emails. Multitasking.
I'm watching
But
Netflix while
research
eating
keeps telling
sushi and
us that
writing
most
emails.
people can't perform 2 or
Multitasking.
more attention-demanding
But
tasks
research
at the
keeps
same
telling us that
time
most people
without
can't
doing one
perform
of those
2 or
tasks
more
badly.
attention-demanding
And
tasks
instead of
at the same
truly
time
multitasking, we
without
often
doing
just
one of those
switch between
tasks
2 or more
badly.
tasks
And
rapidly,
instead of
which
truly
is known as task
multitasking, we often
switching.
just switch between
Research
2 or
suggests
more
there's a
tasks
switch
rapidly,
cost.
which is known
People
as
tend to
task
slow down
switching.
when moving from one
Research
task
suggests
to
there's a
another
switch
due to the
cost.
time it takes the
People
brain
tend
to
to slow down
realign to
when
the
moving
new
from one
task.
task to another
Scientists
due to
and
the
the
time
media
it takes
also
the
point
brain
to
to
anecdotal
realign to the
evidence.
new
If we're
task.
walking, we
Scientists
slow
and the
down when we
media
look at our
also
phones.
point to
If we're
anecdotal
driving, we
evidence.
turn down
If
the
we're
radio
walking,
when we're
we
looking for
slow
our
down when
turn.
we look at our
And
phones.
if we're typing an
If we're
email,
driving,
we often
we turn
lose
down the
track
radio
of what
when
we're
we're
saying on
looking
the
for our
phone.
turn.
It's
And
often
if we're
claimed that we
typing an
can't
email, we often
multitask
lose
unless
track
the
of what we're
actions or
saying on the
processes
phone.
are so
It's often
automatic to
claimed
us
that
that
we
they
can't
don't require
multitask
any
unless the
thought,
actions or
like tying a
processes are so
shoelace while talking
automatic to
about
us
the
that they
weather.
don't require
Unless that
any
is
thought.
you're a
Like tying a
supertasker.
shoelace while
They're
talking
people
about
who
the
can
weather.
actually
Unless that
multitask.
is
They can
you're
perform
a
tasks at the
supertasker.
same time
They're
and do
people
them
who
well.
can
Great. So she then goes on to talk about the anomalies to that and then some of the takeaways that we can have for how we can work into our lives this idea that our brains are meant for single tasking, not multitasking. And the hidden cost in multitasking is the quality of our attention goes down and we do the whole task slower. And if you also look on the research in terms of stress, that the more our attention is divided between things, the more stressful our body finds that. And in stress, our adrenaline levels raise, we have cortisol in the body, and unhealthy patterns of cortisol and adrenaline are responsible for a whole host of psychological and health diseases and disadvantages that we can experience. So we need to be really careful if our thought process is straight to, well, I just do more than one thing at once, or we have a tendency to cram lots of things in, or just have no boundaries around our attention. Then we are probably falling into that category of doing everything worse and slower because we're trying to do everything at once. So let's go back to our information about this, because I've got some really good science-based data to show you that helps us to understand what the alternatives to multitasking are and how we now can apply this to our lives. So Scientifically speaking, our brain has what we call 3 cognitive gears. We've got the low attention, medium attention, and high attention. Sometimes we hear scientists talking about being in flow. This is where we are so concentrating on one thing and our attention is so high that we lose ourselves in that topic. Maybe we're reading a book and we forget our own lives. We become entirely absorbed in the plot and the characters. And cognitively speaking, this is the high performing area in terms of brain function, in terms of productivity, in terms of creativity and innovation. When we are in high attention zone, we have our best ideas. The world seems to slow down for us, and our moments of magic and genius happen in that high attention area. In the medium attention area, we can have this kind of switching between things, and we can have an environment that requires lots of interaction. So maybe this is your busy office where there's lots of things happening, or being at home with the family in a busy household where there are lots of multiple tasks going on at the same time, and you need to interact with a number of different things at once. I think of myself cooking the dinner in the evenings. There's always a child or two coming in with a question. I've usually got my thoughts from the day rattling around my head, and I'm making spaghetti bolognese for the family. Here I am, medium attention zone, and that's great, but we can only do a certain amount of medium attention zone work, cognitively speaking, every day. And then we've got low attention. We're relaxed, unfocused, and there's low need for creativity, low need for interaction, and it's restorative to us. And in terms of how our brains work, if you can imagine a bit of a U-curve, the amount of low attention work our brain can do is higher than medium, but also high attention work is higher than medium work as well, if that makes sense. So it kind of does that curve. So what that's saying to us is we really need to put boundaries to optimize our cognition around the busy, interactive work that we're requiring our brain to do, in order to push that work to both low and high, so that we're single tasking for an extended period of time. The ideal is that we would have between 10 and 45 minutes on a single task before we break state, we lose attention and move either for a break to come back to it or into something else. But the amount of time that we have that kind of medium phase, mid-cognition work, we need to keep boundaries around that. So what do I mean when I say boundaries? Well, here are some thoughts. Really, a boundary, a bit like a fence, would divide 2 pieces of land. A boundary divides what we allow in and what we keep out of our lives. And there are lots and lots of ways that you can draw boundaries around your attention so that you get to decide what is given low, medium, high attention by your brain, your focus, and your energy. And so some of the ways that I talk about drawing boundaries around your attention are that you can stop. You can stop just for a moment. You can stop to take a breath, make it a deep, slow breath, because that's really good for relaxation and stimulating the autonomic nervous system. You can stop for half an hour and just go for a walk. You can stop for a day. Having a day of rest a week is advice that is as old as the hills, but still relevant in terms of effective boundaries that promote health, well-being, and performance. And then, of course, you can stop seasonally for a few days or a week. You can prioritize getting away and holidaying and leisure time with friends and family that restore you and enable you to be operative in your peak at other times when you're on it. So stopping, saying no to demanding tasks or people, Saying no to tasks which for you have a high payout and little payoff. So that might be if there is somebody in your workplace who is particularly negative and you find being around them draining. That might be a place to enforce a boundary. It might be that you need to make a request that you don't do as much work with this person. This is just hypothetically speaking. Or maybe there is a particular routine that you've got where, you know, you go and do the shopping in town and it's hard work and you don't enjoy it and you come back depleted. Consider online shopping rather than walking around town. Whatever it is for you that are the high payout and low payoff tasks, or the people who drain your energy tank, if you think about attention like a tank of petrol, what has a significant depletion to your attention and energy and doesn't really pay you back anything. These are the things to draw boundaries around and to say no. You can always choose to say no. That's another whole topic, by the way, boundaries, for another Wednesday webinar. Slowing down. Have you considered breathing slower? Have you considered eating slower? Just making every mouthful stay in your mouth for longer, every chew of your food slower and more deliberate, sucking the life out of eating and really savoring that as an experience rather than just as a way of getting fuel. Eating slower, breathing slower, walking slower. Maybe talking slower. I talk quite fast on these webinars, so I could probably take my own advice. And allowing a different rhythm to come into the way that you operate, slowing things down. And how about space? Whether that's decluttering your house and creating physical space, maybe getting rid of a few bits of furniture that you don't love or you don't, use very much, or perhaps that's getting into the wide outdoors more regularly so that you are experiencing an expansive space of sky. Or maybe that it is that you clear some space in your diary and you just block times that aren't necessarily this is a time for going away and resting and stopping, but this is just unassigned time that gives me space for overspill, space for creativity, space to do what I haven't done before, space to read that book I've been meaning to read for ages. And simplify, take away the amount of choice you have. If you want to active limit in your life, just pre-decide, I'm going to eat these 5 meals this week. I am going to reduce my wardrobe to a capsule wardrobe of 3 outfits, and I'm just going to wear those. I am going to limit the list of people I intend to spend time with in the next 3 months to these 3 people. There's so many ways that you can creatively simplify your life. Getting rid of clutter, just not having as much stuff, getting rid of options so that you say, right, we're just not going to fly. All our holidays are going to be on a boat, on a train, or in a car, because 1, it's bad for the environment to fly, and 2, we could just do with a simpler life. So many creative ways. You know what's right for you. Solitude and silence is usually a really taxing idea for people in a hyper-connected, busy, and integrated world. And challenging yourself to have an hour of solitude and silence, and maybe building up to being able to have 24 hours every so often of solitude and silence. So you invest heavily and you give your attention to yourself. So much can get done in solitude and with silence, amazingly. And then obviously there's the idea of stillness. So we've talked about stopping as being a way of resting, but sleep is another limit that we don't allow our sleep time to be encroached on. We put a boundary right there and we say, no, bedtime is 10:30 and I don't get up before 7. So I get my 9 hours sleep or 8 hours sleep, whatever it is. And we there's tons of research into the benefits of sleep and the challenges of having a boundary, infringement on our sleep. Interestingly, all these words begin with S. I sometimes say, I'm going to start a religion. It's called the religion of words beginning with S, because there are so many topics that I talk about that begin with the word S. So you might want to pick one from my list of boundaries. Make a commitment right now, write it down somewhere, record it on your phone, of one boundary you are going to adopt that takes care of your attention, that doesn't allow your attention to be spilled into areas that really are not worth your time and do not align with your values. So just pick one. And then I love to recommend ways to do further research and reading around these topics. So there's 2 books that I love. One is In Praise of Slow by Carl Honoré. This is from the whole kind of slow movement is massive. And if you've not come across it before, then there is a whole wealth of books that you can consume about slow living, about minimizing, about simplifying our lives, and about mindfulness. But I really recommend this one, In Praise of Slow, is a great place to start. And then the other one is Margin by Richard Swenson, which is all around this idea of creating buffers in our life and not living our life up to the max, not leveraging everything so much that we're so tightly wound that we don't have space and we don't have margin to be able to really be resilient in life. So those are 2 books. We're coming into the end of the presentation now. And I just had this one thought I wanted to raise with you, to log with you, which is that this kind of stuff, if it was easy, we'd all have already done it. If it was easy to put boundaries around our attention, if it was easy to really reality check where our attention was going, we would have all done it all by now. The reality is it's not easy. It's effortful. It takes attention. It takes time. It takes energy to really get a handle on these. It's easier to sleep through it and just not to know and not to care where our attention is going. And so if you're waking up to the need to curate your life more intentionally and to live with more alignment in your values, your beliefs, your actions, and the culture you create, then you will be getting into some hard work, doing the work of focusing in on your inner world and taking responsibility for deciding how it goes. And I love it when I have clients who perhaps hit a little bit of resistance, or whose work on themselves throws up new challenges, or perhaps surfaces old hurts or old ideas that have lain dormant for quite a long time and have been in the background of their lives. And this work is definitely the kind of work that will do that will throw up challenges for you. And so if you are finding that engaging with attention, curating your life with more balance and more focus is problematic, brilliant. You have got a wonderful opportunity to take a look inside the murky corners of your psyche where you stashed all the things you didn't want to think about because they were difficult. Dig them out, clean up, and live lighter, freer, wholer, and more effectively. Here are my 6 questions that you can ask yourself to begin to clean out the debris that sometimes comes up in these processes. So firstly, what are your subconscious drivers? And by that, are really influential on how you live your life. Second question, what do you need to be honest with about yourself? I find asking open questions of myself is extremely rewarding. and surprisingly fruitful at what I can glean from myself. It's like all I have to do is just give my subconscious space and time to speak, and it will. It comes back to me with all these surprising awarenesses I didn't know I had, but feel very natural to me. So I always say this: if you ask yourself an open question, what do I need to be honest about? What am I afraid of? What am I hiding? And then just allow a little bit of space instantly, but also the kind of give yourself 24 hours, see what you come up with, see what you dream, see what you imagine, see what you notice happening around you after you ask the question. Because answers can come in a number of different ways. And then you want to look for the kind of clarity, realization that feels both surprising and familiar. Surprising because you didn't know you knew it, but familiar because it feels like you. Sometimes it's the first thing you think of. When I ask you the question, what are you hiding? What comes up right then is often the kind of clarity of answer you're looking for. It comes from your subconscious. You didn't make it up. It isn't the right answer that you thought you should give. It's the genuine, truthful response that you wanted to give to that question. So ask your subconscious open questions. What am I hiding? What do I need to be honest about? What do I need to own that I've been pretending isn't there? What are the voices in your head saying? Again, this is a kind of a thought audit. Just note down, what are my beliefs? What do I keep telling myself? What do the inner voices say to me about how I spend my time? Who are you trying to please? What expectations are you trying to meet? And then this is a brilliant one. When did you first learn to be or do that? Often when we're talking about attention and time, there is a subconscious driver that wants more. Maybe it's our ego. Maybe it's that we were criticized as a child. Maybe it's just that in comparing ourselves to others, we've got this drive to be more like them. The inner drive to be more and to have more and to do more is a powerful voice that we need to notice. When did we first start thinking like this? Was there a significant event in our past that caused us to switch on that drive to have more, to be more, to do more? And is that inner driver really serving us well? Oh my goodness. So I know I've just opened a huge can of worms. And if you paid attention, to my talk about attention, if you paid attention to those 6 questions and you actually went to town on yourself with them, wow. What a difference, what a change will be happening inside you. I would love to hear how you get on. Please talk to me. I love getting emails. I really love chat, direct message me online. Here you go. Here are my handles. You can get me on Facebook, on Instagram. You can send me an email, hello@naomilight.com. Talk to me about how it's happening for you, about what you discover when you go to curate your attention. If you track your time, please tell me about it. I really want to hear. I love getting comments. And ask me questions. I'm here to create content that serves you well. That's my mission in life. And if there is content that you would like to see in these webinars, on YouTube, on my social media feeds, please ask for it. Because I can only be responsive if you are talking to me about what you need, what your questions are, what's the most challenging area in your life at the moment in terms of your inner world, your thoughts, your feelings, your behaviors, your relationships, your finances, anything. I would love to hear about it. You can download an ebook that I've written, naomilight.com resources, Plug Yourself into Meaning. It is a collection of 8 self-help tools and just a whole load of insights on a kind of general approach to improving the quality of your life, into plugging into meaning and to squeezing the zest out of your life. And then, of course, you can find me on YouTube. Please subscribe to my channel. It means that not only do you find more of my content, but other people also find my content, which would be fantastic. So if you don't already know where to find me on YouTube, search for Naomi Light Coach and I will pop up. I'll be at the top of the list. And then very finally, coming up on Wednesday webinar, I've tried everything, but I can't break my habit. That's next week. If you've got a lingering, nagging, annoying bad habit, you are so frustrated that you can't shift, you really need to be here next week for Wednesday webinar, because I'm going to be lifting the lid on the science behind bad habits and what we can do to practically tackle them. And then the week after, we're going to look at flexible habits. So these are positive practices. If habitual thinking is hard to break, it's really good news for good habits, because once you've established good habits in your life, they are hard to break too. So join me for the next 2 weeks on Wednesday webinar for bad habits and good habits. I'd love to see you here. I love to get your comments and feedback. And I really hope that this has helped you to curate the kind of life that you are really proud of, the kind of life that you will love living in. So, to your best life.